Hello and welcome back to episode 25 of the Welsh Premiership podcast. And as you may have noticed, we're joined by someone today that's CEO of a club that's not in the Welsh Premiership as of yet, but it's not for want of trying. But he's got an amazing backstory really, and amazing backstory at Pontypool Rugby Club as well. So it's their CEO Ben Jeffreys. Ben, how are you?
It's good to be with you guys, and it's good to be in a group that's part of the Premiership. So it's a first for me. So no, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it today.
Yeah, so obviously Pontypool were in a great position to get promoted last season before COVID struck. Before the curtailment of the season. So what sort of impact has that had on the players, knowing they were so close to getting promoted and it's been taken out of their control?
Yeah, I think it's been the impact for everybody, to be honest with you, at the club, because I think we've established a little bit of a reputation of being a club that has come into money, and I think people outside of our network don't quite understand the level of togetherness and unity we've got in the club. And a lot of our players have been with us for a very long time. Our coaching staff have been with us for a very long time. Volunteers have been there since day one, and we've been there nearly 10 years now. Excuse me and my dad. So the impact on everybody, I think, was massive. And we've shown in the past that we've been able to dust ourselves off, regroup and go again. I mean, you look at, a few seasons ago now, we were on the cusp of getting promoted before the ring fencing period came in, and we narrowly missed out by 2 points. And then we went on to be incredibly successful and become one of the most successful teams in Wales, as it were, over the last few years. And then obviously we had the playoff and we lost that. But we dusted ourselves off and went again. And as you say, we were in a very strong position to get promoted at the sixth, seventh time of asking. And to have that taken away, it was devastating for everybody. And I think you rightly mentioned the players, because it's their sacrifice on the pitch that has got us to this point. And, it's just so frustrating. We had a lot of momentum, and anybody in sport will tell you that momentum is just massive. So for that to be taken away with no real certainty about when it'll come back, I know there's some talk about later this year or early next year, but it's such a fast moving picture all the time. I think for the players, it's just been a case of us not giving them any pressure about keeping in shape or whatever it may be. I think all of our guys have second jobs. So I think our message to them was very much like, do what you got to do. If you're having issues with your own employment elsewhere, put your focus on that, put your focus on your family. We've looked after them in the best way we can by utilising the relief packages at our disposal. So we've kept the group together, and we've looked after them as best as we can. And as I said, the message at the moment is just look after number one, be with your families, do what you got to do. And when rugby comes back, we'll be ready to mobilise again very quickly.
Yeah, and what sort of effect has COVID had on the club elsewhere?
I think it's more of an emotional impact than a financial impact. I mean, being a championship club, we're not heavily funded by the Welsh Rugby Union, so we get circa £15,000 a year, and the rest of it is down to us. Now, I've always been very honest that my father has injected quite a lot of money into the club, so the main source of expenditure obviously is squad and staff. We run a pretty lean operation away from that. So when you consider things like furlough, which we've obviously utilised to keep our team together, we've been okay with stripping all the other expenditure out of the business. So all of the day-to-day running costs, things you'd spend maintaining the pitch, preparing programs, marketing materials, etc. Obviously, we just stopped that overnight, and we were able to eliminate all unnecessary costs out of the business, which unfortunately has had a bad impact on the businesses we work with, because obviously they've all suffered as well. So we've just adapted like everybody else has, but we've been successful, obviously, in keeping the nucleus of our squad together, which is the most important thing, and our coaching staff. So financially, it's actually cost us less to operate during COVID than it normally would, because sponsorship only carries so much, income from supporters only goes so far, and the rest of the whole is plugged by my dad. That's the honest truth. And in terms of how we budget, we set a figure of what he's prepared to part with, and then we work it around that. I mean, that sounds a little bit glib, but the truth is we run as a very well-oiled machine. The business is very tightly run, so we've been able to adapt very easily to COVID. But as I say, I think that the real impact is just that emotional one. I look back to when we first joined the club, and the club was in an absolutely terrible place, and we were lucky to get 100 supporters come to a game. But by the time we finished with COVID, we played Carmarthen Quins in the National Cup, the quarter final, and we had over 2,000 people at Pontypool Park. So all the work that's gone into bringing everybody back to the club, making them feel like the club wants them there. It's taken so many years to get to that point. And as I say, we built so much momentum by having a lot of success. And make no mistake, success is the ultimate attraction for any supporter. They want to see a winning team, and a lot of people have come back. So the fact that that's all gone, and it's been well over a year since we've been together, I do have concerns about the future. Will people come back? Will they be too scared to come back with COVID? Or on the flip side, will people rush to come back after so long away? I've got a good feeling that our supporters are well engaged, but like everybody else, it's such an unknown time at the moment. It's uncharted territory, and we just have to adapt to it as it comes across.
And Ben, I know you've recently completed some of the projects you've been doing at Pontypool Park. More recently, the Ray Prosser stand. How happy are you with the facilities now up at Pontypool Park?
Delighted, and it's been a very, very long journey to get to that point. So, as I say, we joined the club in late 2012, and my dad decided to get involved. I'd never watched a game of rugby in my life, other than maybe one or two, where he'd sponsored the club before. Wanted nothing to do with it. And, we came in, and obviously the club was in a terrible state. And we quickly identified we had two priorities, really. The one was to stabilize the business and the club, and assemble a squad, because we had like 3 players left when we first joined. And we were sort of scratching around trying to get players from everywhere. But the other issue was the ground, and it was in a hell of a bad state of repair. And the longer we were involved, the more acts of vandalism it had suffered, and it was just getting worse and worse. So for people who are not aware, that the ground was previously completely open to the public, and there was a covenant that prevented any part of Pontypool Park from being enclosed. Effectively, it had to remain open to the people at all times, even though there's a leisure centre right next door to the club, which shuts at 9 o'clock. People can't just walk in there at 2 a.m. and go for a swim. So it was a bit confusing to us, but and there's other amenities in the park which are enclosed. There's a ski slope, there's a bowls club, there's tennis courts, and they're all locked up at certain parts of the day. So really the challenge for us was overcoming the covenant, but we were just met with this ridiculous level of obstruction from Torfaen Council and some members of the public, actually, who just didn't want to see anything happen to the ground. I still to this day don't know why. We never asked them for a penny, really. It was all something we wanted to do off our own backs, just because we wanted to make the club professional and make people proud of it again. So, it took us 6 years, really, to get it over the line. And at one point we were going to leave the ground. It was a very much publicised public dispute we had with Torfaen Council, but ultimately both sides came back together, which was good. I think they did realise in the end, but we were very serious about what we were doing. We were looking at somewhere which was just outside Pontypool to relocate to. So it was right on the border. So, it wouldn't have been great, but it was our only option, but we were serious about it. So luckily all sides came back together, and then we started on this very complex legal process, planning process, which took another 2.5 years. And again, it was more complicated than it needed to be. It was very challenging, but anyway, ultimately we got that over the line. And we had sort of questioned to ourselves how we were going to do the works, because obviously without COVID, we had 2 or 3 months every summer to do something. And looking back at what we've done, I don't think we'd have been able to do it. I think we would have had to have left the ground for half a season or something, because looking at how far we went with the development and some of the unforeseen things we found, it was a real mess. If you've seen it before, the works, it was as bad as it looked, basically. So over the last 4 months, we've been working really hard on that. TPS Construction, which was our contractor, Actually, one of their members of staff used to play for us, Rodri Usher, so we had a good link with them, and they've been fantastic. And over the last 4 months, it's been really good because it's been a way for us to keep connected with our fan base and to see the interest and the pride everybody has had in the works. You know, I was doing little Facebook Lives every week, just showing people the progress, and it grew week in and week out. Had like 40,000 people view it over the course of 4 months. So that's given us a lot of confidence that people are happy with it. And it'll just be nice to go back there with a ground that's fenced off, that has seats. I know that sounds really stupid, but there were not many seats left. People were burning them, ripping them out, all the rest of it. And it'd be great for our volunteers to go there and not have to pick up drug paraphernalia, excrement, you name it, it was there, and it was just horrendous for what they were having to do, but they did it for the love of the club. So it'd be great when we can come back, welcome people back to a rejuvenated ground, and hopefully that bodes well for hopefully having a push for promotion.
So when you look back at the 2018-19 season, obviously you won the league comfortably, and then you faced that playoff against Llanelli. How frustrating was it having to play off with a team that finished fifth bottom instead of just going straight up?
Yeah. It's two ways to look at it. You know, I mean, on the one hand, we knew it going in, and really it was up to us to assemble a team and progress enough to get the job done. So it wasn't like we were blindsided by it. So I'll grant you that. But the whole concept of it, I mean, we need to go back a few seasons before that, really, when ring fencing was introduced. And for me, the number one frustration with the Welsh Rugby Union is they just can't settle on a product. And how anybody expects clubs to build continuity, prestige, whatever it is, with their fan base, you just can't do that. It's impossible. And there's this big debate going on about, should the Premiership be a development tool or not? And I'm firmly against that. And I know that's probably not a popular view, because I think the Premiership clubs maybe feel a bit threatened by being cast aside. But I really do believe the A-team structure that was put in place is the right way to go, for the reasons being that I just don't think you can develop prospective players in the environments we have. It's a different environment. And I think, I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm saying it in a positive way. We've got a unique product. And from my own experience dealing with our fan base and people connected to our club, they don't care about player development. They care about Pontypool being champions. And that's why everybody's come back to watch us, because we're winning and we're clear about what we want to achieve. We're clear about where we want to go. We want to get to the Premiership, and we want to win the Premiership and the National Cup, because we want to be the best club in Wales. And that's the mandate now from the Welsh Rugby Union. It's about who's the best club in Wales. And already in one season, we've seen, obviously, you know, we didn't finish the season, but attendances were up at our games because it was jeopardy, because we were playing for promotion. I went to the game between Bridgend and Ponty before the playoff, where they needed the win to stay up, and it was probably 2,000 people there, and a lot of them were from our club, Bedworth, because we all knew the importance of the game. Whereas before, you know, the seasons prior to that, what was the point? You know, there was no jeopardy, attendances were low, interest in the product was really low. So I was really excited that whole season anyway. I mean, I know we had the playoff, but just the prospect of being able to achieve something. I mean, we won the league 2 seasons prior to that. We got in the habit of going unbeaten, and great though that is, and ecstatic I am that we achieved those things. We're not a championship club, we're a Premiership club, and we want the jeopardy every week of playing an opponent and not really knowing what the outcome of the game was going to be. And I don't say that with any arrogance whatsoever, but that's the importance of promotion and relegation. So anyway, this playoff gets announced, and at this point we had to just take it, because we'd had 3 years of nothing, being stuck, and it was something. And then we were led to believe that there wouldn't be a playoff moving forward after that one game. But it was all symptomatic of the mess the union had made of the whole product. You know, is it 16 teams? Is it 12 teams? Is it 14 teams? I don't know. Let's just keep messing around with it until it kind of feels right. And even now, Welsh Rugby Union has no strategy for the Premiership, Championship and below. And it's so frustrating, because so much of what makes a good league doesn't cost a lot of money. There's no marketing strategy. They don't even broadcast the cup draws. You know, I go to the I used to go to the cup draws just to see what it was like, because I'd heard all these rumors that they warm a couple of the balls up so they know to pick, and I go to them. It's nothing like that. It's Ten at the Vale hotel, the resort which they're based at. It's all professional, but we don't show anybody anything. So that's my frustration with the product as a whole, and that playoff was a complete consequence of that total mismanagement of our game. So obviously, I in a way, we got sort of set up to fail on national television, really, I feel, because yes, you know, as I say, we weren't blindsided. We had time to prepare, and we weren't good enough on the night. Best team won, no doubt about that. But the fact we played a side that they didn't manipulate anything. They played the rules, they played the regulations in their favour, and they drew on their relationship with the Scarlets. But you know, our boys that have second jobs, they're plumbers, they're electricians, whatever it is. And then you've got Tom Pridey just blasting past them after 60 minutes. He's a professional player, and there was like 7 of them. And we just couldn't live with that level of intensity. We lived with them for about 40 minutes, 50 minutes. And but there were 2 key moments in that game. Lloyd Lewis, our winger, ball popped up right in front of him. If he catches it, it's a try. Darren Hughes, our hooker, just about breaks free. If he had a little bit more gas, it would have been a try, maybe a different game. But, you know, it was so disappointing, because I know in my heart of hearts that we were good enough to be in the Premiership. You know, if we played Llanelli without the Scarlets players, there was only one winner as far as I'm concerned, and they were bottom of the Premiership for a reason. And it's as simple as that. Notwithstanding that, as I say, I was talking to what was left of Llanelli's committee beforehand, and I think there'd been a lot of upheaval in their ranks heading into that game about why they were in that position in the first place. And I'll be honest, I think they needed to win that game more than we did, because I think if they went down, I think the relationship between the Scarlets and them was very precarious. So, but they're a really good club, so nothing I'm saying here is criticising them or what they did. You know, they used the rules to their advantage, and we came off second best. But I just felt it was really harsh that we, Nigel Owens was the ref. Broadcast on BBC, massive audience. We took about 3,000 supporters there on the night, and it was so disappointing to come off second best in that. But again, it points to the issue with the Welsh Rugby Union, but they've just got to get their act together, because, you know, whether it's lack of funding or interest or expertise, we just have not got a good product at the moment. And it's only by the work we do as clubs to get people involved that the products even survived at all. And it's got to change.
Yeah, and rugby's making a gradual return now again in Wales. How have you managed to get the players back into training, and how have you stayed in contact with them throughout the last year or so?
We're not training at the moment, so we've kept in touch with them. We've got obviously a team WhatsApp group, and I'm not involved in that group. It's between the coaches and the players, but I'll ask the head coach to put some messages in just to keep them updated on things. And but at the moment we're not training, and from what I know about what's happening moving forward, I think we've taken the decision as a club, we're not going to participate in any of the cups in the summer, any of the stuff in the autumn, because they're just not real cups and they're not worth bringing people back for, I don't think. And all signs at the moment point towards a league campaign starting in January. So for us, given what I've just explained about the importance of promotion and where we want to go, that, you know, I do not want to be bringing players back in July, August, 6 months or so before we start a league campaign, where they're going to get injured or, you know, playing in competitions that just aren't worth competing in, quite honestly. So I think our current thinking is we'll probably come back together in October. As it stands, you know, obviously it can change at any time, but we'll come back in October and do our own pre-season. So we'll arrange our own pre-season fixtures. We'll do our own sort of fitness campaign, because, you know, the players have not played a minute of rugby since last March, haven't trained once. And I think there's a safety element to that. We've got to take that really seriously and make sure everybody beds back in and comes back safely. So, we shared that with our supporters last week, and obviously people are disappointed that we're not going to come back sooner. But ultimately, we've just got to do what we think is best at the moment. And if we get promoted next summer, then obviously it'll be the right decision. If we don't, it'll be the wrong decision. I don't know. It's such uncharted territory, as I said. But yeah, we're keeping informed with the squad. And I think the challenge for us throughout this period has been settling on a squad, because we start our recruitment for the following season in November. So obviously before COVID struck, we signed the vast majority of the players we felt we were going to have in the Premiership. So we've got a great squad, and we've got people who've been with us for a year who've never played a minute of rugby for us, but they're part of the squad. So it's not a mess, but we've just got some stuff to sort out, and there'll be some more players leaving us now in this next window. So we've just got to finalise the squad, and as I say, we're not going to come back for some months yet, and but by the time we do, we'll be fully organised and ready to go.
Yeah, you mentioned then a little bit about the squad. What's the makeup of the squad going to look like for next season? Is there any, you mentioned signings, is there any like noticeable like incomings or outgoings that you can mention? And also, has it been hard to retain players and sign players with no like guaranteed start date?
I can't share any names at the moment, sorry, but
I thought that might be your answer.
I don't blame you for trying. We're always worth a go. Yeah, but we've signed some really top draw players, and if I go back to just mention about this playoff a second, I think one thing I didn't mention when I was talking there was the level of honesty we have internally. So although it was disappointing with the playoff, and we came up against regional players, etc., we didn't really share this too much publicly, but we knew we had some deficiencies in our team, and I think we knew we needed to make some changes internally to improve. So, and I think you saw the benefits of that in the season, but ultimately never was, because obviously you had 5 teams come down, and we beat all of them once. And we were, we're looking good to go up. So as a group, we're always very honest, and we always keep moving. I don't think we felt victimized after that playoff, or put it that way, because we made some changes. So we brought Tom Hancock in as backs coach, made a change there. And he was our analyst the season before that. And, for us, that's been a key move, because we've got a really good coaching unit. And what we're seeing is we're identifying weaknesses in our team or areas in our strategy which need refinement, and the recruitment we've done is another signal that we want to keep improving all the time. So we've made some really key signings, which I hope we'll be able to start sharing with supporters in the next couple of months or so. I mean, we haven't shared anything so far, and the rationale was we were going to last summer when it looked like COVID may not be a very long-term thing. But as things progressed and more people were losing their lives to COVID, and more livelihoods are being affected, we just felt it was really poor taste to start making a raft of squad announcements and sign-ins and all the rest of it. So that's why we sort of kept it a bit low-key, because we've tried to be responsible as well with the public health messages of staying home, keeping focused on just doing the right things right now, so more people don't lose their lives. So that's why we've sort of kept our cards close to our chest. But yeah, we've made about 7 or 8 sign-ins over the last year, and obviously people that's to replace people. So we'll settle on a squad of about 36 players, something like that, and that ranges from top players to development players who'll spend most of the season at local clubs like Pontypool United or Tallaway. But the challenge for us has been, as I say, we've gone a whole year with a squad which has been changed and chopped and everything, and haven't played a minute together. So that's why I'm really confident that when we get back together, though, that we'll be prepared. We've done our business. We're not just sitting on our cash for a while. We've done our business, and we've done it sensibly. But again, if we don't go next year, then I don't know what we do, because we'll go through a third incarnation of a squad, and it's it's a challenge, but everybody's going through that at the moment. And but no, to answer your other question, no, we've not really found it hard to do business, because we did 99% of it before COVID struck, and we've just sort of maintained what we've had. So so we're in a good position. Everything's really stable with us, but again, it's just that unknown of when we come back, what sort of shape will everybody be in? What will the landscape be? Nobody knows.
Okay, so how much pressure comes with running one of the most famous clubs in Welsh rugby, and how special is the club to you?
Well, it's funny, really, because as I mentioned earlier, when I got involved back in 2012, so I was like 23 years old, and I had no idea of the significance of Pontypool Rugby Club. Like I said, my dad, the club went bust under the previous ownership, so just a very brief backstory on that. Again, in the WRU's wisdom, as I mentioned earlier, they restructured the Premiership back in 2012, and they shrunk it, and they demoted Pontypool from the Premiership. So Pontypool didn't finish bottom. They weren't relegated. They were demoted. And the owners at the time were so aggrieved by that, and rightfully so, actually, but they took the WRU to the High Court and ultimately gambled everything. They put every penny the club had into this court case, thinking it was a shoe-in, but they were going to win it and be put back in the Premiership, and they lost. And they had no plan B. And ultimately, they sat 5 unsuspecting people in the room, asked them to sign some papers, but what they were actually signing was the shareholding transfer to them and the directorship to them. And these people who made the decision ran off. It's disgusting, and not many people know about that. So my dad had been successful in business. He grew up as a Pontypool fan. He'd sort of fallen out of love with the club a little bit, but he'd come back here and there. And he heard of the situation, and he basically paid off all the legal fees. So it was a 6-figure payment he made. And he sort of hung around a bit and made a commitment to sort of helping pay for a squad and everything. Because as I mentioned before, everybody left when the money dried up. There was like 3 or 4 players left, and we had the club at the time had a development team. So we literally just pulled all them in. And so it was a bit of a mess. It was a real mess. But unfortunately, after my dad made the commitment, about 2 weeks afterwards, he suffered a pretty big stroke. And his investment was there, but there was nobody running the club. So I just finished a master's degree, no commercial experience, never really had a job. I was like, oh yeah, I'll help you out, no problem. Went in, and it was just a baptism of fire. Just had no idea what I was walking into. And as you say, it's a famous club. It comes with expectation, it comes with pressure, but I didn't know I was under pressure until I went in there. And it was an absolute train wreck. It was so badly run. It was unbelievable. And I think I spent the first month just getting rid of people, toxic people who were just trying to take a slice of the pie for themselves. And it was a horrendous atmosphere. So that's where we've come from, and I've made a lot of mistakes over the years. I just had no experience ultimately. So I've learned on the job, and we've learned a lot of harsh lessons. And I think the number one thing we learned very early is money does not guarantee success. And I mentioned earlier, but we've got this reputation, but money is a facilitator of success. It's not a guarantee of success. You have to do all those other things, make people feel part of a team, make people valued in what they're doing, create a level of enjoyment, but a clarity of purpose and a real focus on what we're there to do. And over time, we've got better. We've eliminated some not so good people from the club, replaced them with really good people. And I look at the coaching staff we have now. Leighton Jones, he grew up with the club, former captain of the club. He's been there forever. His dad coached the club. So we've got people who understand. They've got the club in their DNA, and that's really helped us. But to answer your question, how much pressure does it come with? There's a pressure, definitely. And I think that's why it's so important when we get promoted, and why there was a lot of emotion on that playoff night. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the documentary that we had produced in the run up to the playoff, and you could see after that, sometimes when clubs lose big games, people turn on you. But we've built such a community at the club now that we lost the game, and whilst we're doing our post-match huddle after the playoff, we turned around and all the supporters were on the pitch and they all started hugging us. Everybody was crying. We were all gutted about the result, but everybody was just supporting us and they were grateful for what we've done over the last few years. So whilst there's a pressure, and it is a pressure because it's a big club, as you say, I think that the togetherness and the unity we've got as a club has really overridden that pressure, because we all know what we want to achieve. We all want to get this club back to where it was and where it should be, but we know we're doing it in the right way by valuing our people and taking them on that journey with us. And it's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to be involved in this club. And you ask what it means to me. It's been the single most important decision of my life to get involved in this rugby club, because as we may get onto in due course, at that time I was in a terrible place mentally. I was housebound largely due to what I was going through, and couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, in a terrible, terrible mess. And the club just gave me a bit of a focus and give me something to really hone in on and just give my attention to. And it got me out of the house and it got me to a better place. So in many respects, I owe my life to this club. And that's why we're so determined to get it back to where it needs to be, because it's not what's in it for me. It's giving something back to this club and the people who've really helped me in a big way throughout the years.
Yeah, and you've touched upon the togetherness of everyone inside the club. How big is the club for the community of Pontypool?
It's huge. It's huge. And I still don't think we're quite connected with the community in the way we need to be. But we started from such a low base. I mean, it's really funny to me. I came into the club and I obviously I didn't know the history of it. I had to learn it very quickly. But you hear all this amazing stuff about what a great club it was, how successful it was under Ray Prosser. You look at the pictures on YouTube when they played the All Blacks in '89. You just couldn't see a blade of grass on that bank. It was just full of people. And everybody talks so highly of Pontypool, but when we got there, it was probably one of the most toxic clubs in Welsh rugby at the time. It had become completely disconnected from the community. It had somehow alienated itself from the supporter base, clubs around us. There was no relationships with anybody. It had no sponsors, it had no players, very few supporters. And to see a club, I look back now, and obviously I was ignorant to it at the time, but I look back now and I just think, wow, this club is one of the greatest clubs in Welsh rugby history, and it had fallen that low. And we had a massive job on our hands, as I say. First of all, we had to just get a team together. We had to somehow try and not get relegated from the Championship, which was a real prospect. I mean, we lost 16 of the first 17 games. And for some reason, we had a flurry at the end. I think it was sort of coincided with when my dad made a firm commitment to stay, just give everybody a boost. We narrowly staved off relegation. But then in the first few years, I'll be honest with you, I don't think we made progress in the areas we needed to make progress. We put all our focus on trying to get promoted and putting a team together. And we had no experience of picking a coach, setting a proper budget, understanding the nuances between squad players and putting a medical team together, all this stuff. We'd never done it before. My dad had been successful in other areas of business, but this sport is a different animal. It's amazing how much emotion plays into it. So we were looking in the wrong area for the first few years. And even when we just failed to get promoted at the time of ring fencing, when it first came in, I'm glad now we didn't go up, because if we'd have gone up, I think it would have papered over a lot of cracks. We didn't have a great coaching unit, cohesion. We're good people, but they just weren't meshing well together. We'd spent a lot of money on the wrong players. We went for names rather than characters and individuals. So it was when we didn't go up, really. That was when we started to look properly at what we were doing. And as I say, we appointed Leighton Jones as head coach, and he was brilliant from the outset, because he said, if you're offering it to me as we are, I don't want to take it. But if you're offering it to me and we're going to work to do things differently, I'm all in. And that's what he did. We reconnected with the local clubs around us, Pontypool United and Tallawayne. We now have a proper established relationship for co-development of players and sharing of resources, which we never had. We branched out into the community. We welcome age grade teams, mini and junior teams, and their families to Pontypool Park for training days. If we have injured members of our squad, they will do bespoke training sessions for the kids. And then on match days, we'll welcome teams for curtain raiser games, things like this, really forming relationships with people in the right way. And what we've seen is people have started to respect the club again, not for what it was, but for what it is and for where it's going. And yes, we got a big name and it's helped sort of, get us in the shop window to these people. But that's why it was so important to develop the ground, because we want Pontypool Rugby Club to be a hub of the community in Torfaen. And we're really starting to make big progress there. And I think it really does correlate with the increased number of supporters we've seen come back, because I think people for the first time in a long time actually feel valued. I look back and nobody was telling supporters, we want you there. It was kind of like, no, you will be here and you will give us your money because this is Pontypool. No, you have to put the work in. And that's what we tried to do. And it's just a shame again that COVID has sort of derailed that for the moment. But I'm confident, we've got all the same people, so we'll get it back in the future. I've no doubt about that.
So leading on nicely from that then, what are your ambitions for Pontypool Rugby Club then moving forward, on the pitch, off the pitch?
On the pitch, it's promotion, simple as that. And, we have to get promoted. Financially, it'll help the club. But also, I think just in terms of the shared vision we've all had at the club, and I include supporters, volunteers, squad, staff, everybody. We've all had this dream for like 10 years now to get promoted, and I look forward to the day where we can do that, because I think it'll be a real tick for what we've tried to do. But from there, I think we have to then turn our focus to staying in the Premiership and competing to win the Premiership and the National Cup, and really kicking on as a club from there. But I don't think that's going to happen overnight. I don't think we're under any false illusions where we're just going to go up there and then all of a sudden we'll compete. We'll have to keep reinventing and improving. But off the field, I just think the stuff I mentioned, really, we just need to do more of it and really continue to do it, because I think what I've learned over the years is when you're winning, and I think it's really, you've got to be really careful in our position, because I think when you're winning, it's easy for some people, I think, to get a false sense of security, but everybody's going to be with you every step of the way and everybody loves you when you're winning. But when you start losing, and we've been there, people do want change. And whether that's me, head coach, whatever, if we're not winning, they'll want that change. So, I'm under no false illusions, but, if we start losing, that's what's going to happen, which is why I think it's so important we continue with the community work. Because I think it takes the club from just having on-field aspirations to off-field aspirations. And I think, the combination of those two will hold us in good stead. And what I really liked about it was just that we were seeing more kids getting involved in rugby at a local level. They were enjoying it. They felt welcome at the ground. And that's it for us. I think the big challenge for us when we get back is we just got to get everybody back together safely. And because we have undoubtedly lost people to this pandemic, and I know we have lost supporters to COVID. So we've just got to get back together, and hopefully our off-field aspiration is just to get everybody back safe and get people confident and happy and enjoying themselves again in a public setting, which obviously we haven't had for so very long now.
Yeah, so moving on, you've been quite open in your discussing your battles with mental health. How important is it to talk about it?
Yeah, it's massive. It's huge. And I look back to, as I mentioned before, when I first joined the club, I clearly had something going on from a very young age with OCD. And I've always been very uneasy around unhygienic things. So cleanliness and all the rest of it. And, you look at COVID and what's happening there. The irony is how everybody's living now, with the hand washing, the sanitizing, all that is how I've lived forever. So this hasn't really been an adjustment for me. If anything, it's helped me sort of blend in a little bit because I'm very much over the top with that sort of stuff. And but back then when I was just finishing university, I was in a really, really terrible place. So I didn't really adapt well to university, so I got very isolated whilst doing my studies. And I had an apartment with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. But other than that, I just didn't see anybody. I went to lectures and what have you. But and the thing I've noticed is the more you isolate yourself and the more you hide what you're going through, which is what I was doing, it's just impossible. You can't sustain that. And I got to the point where, I've mentioned it publicly before, but with my OCD in particular, I just couldn't stop brushing my teeth or gargling mouthwash or cleaning my hands. And I literally would just be washing my hands with hot water, just a hot tap on. And I was just scalding myself all the time. And I got scared to eat. I couldn't sleep. So I was pretty much functioning on 1 to 2 hours sleep a night for about 2 years. And I wasn't eating. So I'm, what am I, about 12 stone, 11 stone now. I was about 9 stone. I just wouldn't eat, couldn't function. And then it became more than hygiene. So I was writing assignments, and with OCD, obviously, there's a lot of repetition. And it got to the point where I couldn't even write a line of my dissertation without having to write it again and again. And I got to the point where I'd written my dissertation, which, as you guys know, they're not small bodies of work. And I'd have another document next to it, just retyping it because it just didn't feel right. And I can't explain that. That's just OCD and the way it goes. But to answer your question about how important it is to talk about it, I was trying to deal with that and not show anybody anything. I mean, my wife knew about it back then, obviously. But I didn't feel confident telling my family. I couldn't talk to my friends about it because I think even back then there was this sort of feeling that if you shared anything, you were crazy. It's not like it is now, and we still got a long way to go, by the way, with that. But back then you just couldn't talk about it at all. So I ended up getting a bit of therapy and making enough progress. And as I say, then when I got involved with the club, that just gave me enough of a focus. It forced me. I didn't have a choice. As you say, it's a big club and it was a public facing role. I had to just get out there and get on with it. And that got me to a point. But then it wasn't really until about 5 years ago where I just continued to suffer with it. I was also suffering with depression, which has since been re-diagnosed as bipolar disorder, which has been quite big. It wasn't until I shared it that I realized just how many other people have experienced it, and the amount of people I've had contact me privately and they've not shared anything with anybody and they've confided in me. And it just goes to show that there's no reason at all why people shouldn't be able to share it. And the fact that there are still some people out there who view mental health challenges as a weakness or something to be ashamed of, clearly those people have never lived with something, because the strength it takes to live with a mental health condition and function in your daily life and try and hide it from other people is quite an achievement for anybody to do for a prolonged period of time. So it's massively important you speak up about it, because just how many people we've lost because they felt nobody would understand. And that has happened to me. There's been a couple of times where, I've really been close to just calling it a day. And luckily I got help. And, but as I've experienced over the last year, it doesn't go away. You just have to maintain it as best you can. And a key part of that is talking to people and getting help.
How important is it to ask and get help? And what would your advice be to people who are currently struggling with their mental health?
Well, to answer your second question first, I think it's important to speak to somebody, and I think taking that first step is really difficult. And I remember the first time I told a couple of people close to me, expecting this really bad response, and I was trembling. I was just but since that's happened, I look to some of my closest friends who know everything now. There's nothing they don't know, because they've been there and supported me at my darkest moments. It's to the point now where I can just say to them, look, I'm having one of those days, and since I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder late last year, and I just tell them, hey, I'm having a polar day. That's sort of the phrase we've given it now. And they go, okay, fine, they back off, leave me alone, or whatever it is. And that helps so much, because I'm not under any pressure to go somewhere, see people, and then go there with a bad attitude or really, if I'm having a really dark day, I can confide in people, and that takes so much pressure off. And I'm not saying it's a pass. if you do something wrong, I'm having a polar day. It's not that. But if you just, what I've learned with this is, you just, when you're having a rough time, you just know. And if you've got that ability to just tell people and they give you a bit of a break and support you, actually, it makes a massive difference. But, to get help and to speak to people, like over the last 18 months or so, I've been on quite a rocky road with my mental health. But if I hadn't had that network of a psychiatrist, a therapist, my friendship network, I would never have got this diagnosis. And and I can't explain to you just how life-changing this diagnosis has been. So, before, as I mentioned, I had depression, what I felt was depression, OCD, but I kept going in this cycle all the time of, I'd have a week of being really productive, wouldn't need much sleep, could function with little whatever, I could just go when I felt good about myself. But then indiscriminately, I would wake up and I would just feel terrible, couldn't get out of bed, didn't want to speak to people, wouldn't answer my phone. And, I had some challenges in my private life, like we all do over the last 18 months or so. And that really sent me into a massive downward spiral. And I ended up in rehab last year. And then I ended up in hospital a few days after that, after suffering a hemorrhage brought on by all the stress. But it was a combination of that, having a psychiatrist and a therapist who I'd established a trusting relationship with, and my friends, that then we started to piece together, actually, it's probably not depression, this is probably bipolar disorder. And we subsequently found out that my medication that I was taking for depression was actually causing me to cycle rapidly between depressive and hypomanic spells, which is sort of the waves of bipolar. So we came off that medication, put on the right medication, and the difference was unbelievable. So were it not for that ability for me to speak out with a bit of confidence, that I can share what's going on, I would still be in that spiral. And I think that shows the importance of speaking to somebody. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a friend. It could be anybody, a work colleague, whoever you feel you can just confide in. And that's the only bit of advice, because I don't really give advice, because everything is so personal, but I think the number one thing is, you don't have to do it alone. That's the number one thing I would say, because when you are tired and you're exhausted and all you're relying on is your own tired mind to get you through whatever you're going through, that is not sustainable. And I'm living proof of that, but it doesn't work. So if there's anybody you can find, definitely try and reach out if you can.
And Ben, I know you're chairman for Mind in Torfaen and Blaen y Gwent. How important is that organisation for you, and also how important is the work that they do?
Yeah, it's been a great opportunity to work with Torfaen and Blaen y Gwent Mind, and unfortunately the charity's been going through a bit of a difficult spell over the last few years. It's not really been managed particularly effectively, and that means ultimately that we haven't helped as many people as we should, particularly during these difficult times. So my work with them has really been structural, really, in terms of getting it right, operating as a business. And I don't mean that as a profit-making entity, but a business that functions properly with good levels of staffing, structure. And a lot of work we've been doing lately is getting the national accreditation from Mind, which shows that we operate to best practice in over 24 key standards. Previously, it didn't have it. So it's been frustrating as someone who suffered with a mental health challenge to see a charity which could do so much, perhaps not be run so effectively by the people at the top. But I'm really encouraged by the fact that the people who are delivering the services, we've got a great group of people there. And we've been involved in a project called Active Monitoring, which is Mind's national commitment to delivering mental health counselling services via Zoom, and we just had that extended for another 6 months. So, we are actually now connecting with people and helping people through these challenges at the moment through COVID. And we're working on growing the organisation as well to compete for some tenders, to start delivering more services, particularly as we get back to face-to-face stuff. So it's my hope in the next 12 months or so that we'll have a much stronger entity, which means that anybody in Torfaen will be able to contact the charity if they're having a challenging time. and receive help or signposting or whatever it may be, because there's been big cuts in funding for mental health over the last few years. And, it's just the worst time in the world to do that. There's so many people we're seeing anecdotally, we don't have firm evidence of this ourselves, but I know mine nationally does, but more and more people are suffering throughout this pandemic, and they've never, ever had a mental health challenge in their lives. So this is new to them. And I look back to when I first started struggling. It comes with a lot of shame. It comes with a lot of fear, self-loathing, and it's really important that when people are feeling like that, we can get to them quickly and really, try and reduce their levels of anxiety or whatever it may be before it becomes a lifelong debilitating condition. So I'm pleased with what we're doing. I know Mind are working hard nationally, and it's just more important than ever that we reach out and help people, because it's obviously this pandemic is incredibly challenging, and more people are suffering as a result of it.
And then the final question from me is, how important a role does sport play in supporting people?
Yeah, it's huge. And my own example, effectively, I became part of a team which I knew nothing about, and over time, particularly the more I shared about my own mental health situation over the years, I've had supporters reach out to me who have got help off the back of me sharing my story. And you build those relationships with people so they can keep in touch with you. You can keep an eye out for each other. And, I look at, I saw your segment with Matt Silver, and, I just think I have nothing but admiration and respect for what he's done over the last few months, because the sheer amount of honesty, he has shared, and he really effectively shared the true nature of what it's like when you're in a really rough time. And to see how many people in the rugby community reached out to him, shared their own stories, I just think that's so unbelievable. And rugby has a reputation in particular of being quite a macho sport where you can't show weakness or what people perceive as weakness. But I think to see someone like Matt sharing his story in the way he did, someone who's been in the game for so long, is just incredible. And you could see the impact that had on people. So the more that we break these barriers down, and the more people feel they can talk, if we can have a club like Pontypool that embraces its community, embraces its supporter base, and people start feeling like they're part of something, all of a sudden they feel like there's people in their network they can share things with. And we've seen that over the last few years. We've had groups of supporters form their own little groups. We've got a group called the PPF, and they have flags and drums, and they are like the focal point of our supporter base. And I'm sure they've had challenges, but they've traveled the games together, they form relationships. And hopefully, if we can break the stigma down a bit more, keep people connected through sport, I think that's a great vehicle for doing a lot of good with mental health and helping people through a lot of challenges.
That's a wrap then for episode 25. I just wanted to end by saying thanks for your time. In terms of Pontypool, I think everyone wants to see Pontypool back in the Prem and competing. And I think it won't be too long before we see that happening. And then on a personal level as well, thanks for sharing your story. I think it's incredibly brave of you. And I know the likes of yourself and Matt and people that do speak out have helped a lot of other people as well. So thanks for giving up your time to talk to us today.
No, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
And thanks to everyone for watching. And remember to catch up on our social media channels at Welsh Premiership Pod. Thank you and goodbye.